Your car still starts. It still drives. Maybe the temperature gauge only climbs once in a while. Maybe you've topped off the coolant a couple of times and told yourself it's probably nothing. Maybe there's a little white smoke on startup, or the heater acts weird, or there's this sweet smell you can't quite place. And that's exactly why head gasket failure catches so many people off guard. It usually doesn't begin with some dramatic explosion. It starts with little warning signs that are easy to explain away, right up until the day the engine overheats hard and the repair bill gets ugly. Here's the thing: a lot of engines give warning signs before major damage happens. The problem is, most people hope the issue just goes away. If you like practical car advice that can save you from expensive engine damage, subscribe, because this is one of those problems where catching it early can make a massive difference. The head gasket itself is actually pretty simple to understand. It sits between the engine block and the cylinder head, and its job is to keep three things separated that absolutely do not belong mixing together: combustion pressure, coolant, and oil. When that seal starts failing, those systems can cross over. Coolant can get into the cylinders. Combustion gases can get into the cooling system. Oil and coolant can contaminate each other. And this is where a smaller repair can turn into a financial nightmare. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying every overheating problem means a blown head gasket. Bad thermostats, radiator issues, water pumps, cooling fans, and external leaks can cause similar symptoms. But if these signs keep showing up together, or they keep coming back, you do not want to ignore that pattern. One of the biggest warning signs is repeated overheating, not just one random hot day in traffic. I'm talking about a car that runs hot more than once or creeps past normal, cools back down, then does it again later. A lot of people make the mistake of treating that like a minor inconvenience. They shut it off, let it cool, add coolant, and keep driving. The scary part is, the engine may still run while damage keeps getting worse. Why does that happen? Because once a head gasket starts leaking, combustion pressure can push into the cooling system and make it less effective at controlling temperature. Or coolant can escape internally, which means the engine slowly loses its ability to stay cool even if you don't see a big puddle under the car. Overheating is not just a symptom here. It also makes the problem worse. Extra heat can warp the cylinder head, stress the gasket even more, and turn a repairable issue into a much bigger engine job. The next one is unexplained coolant loss. This is one people overlook all the time. If your coolant level keeps dropping but you don't see a clear external leak, pay attention. That sounds minor, but it can point to something serious. Most drivers assume the car just uses a little coolant, but modern cooling systems are sealed. Coolant doesn't normally vanish for no reason. Sometimes it leaks externally from a hose, radiator, or water pump. But sometimes it's going somewhere inside the engine. It can seep into a combustion chamber and get burned off, or it can pressurize the cooling system in ways that push coolant out of the overflow. So if you're topping off coolant every week or every couple of weeks and nobody has found an obvious leak, that deserves a real diagnosis. Most people ignore this at first because the car still seems drivable, and this is where people accidentally destroy the engine. Another high-value sign is white smoke from the exhaust, especially if it's thick, persistent, and has a sweet smell after the engine is warm. A little vapor on a cold morning is normal. That's not the same thing. What you're looking for is smoke that keeps hanging around after the car should have cleared up. That can mean coolant is getting into the combustion chamber and turning into steam. Again, not every white cloud automatically means a blown head gasket. Condensation exists. Some engines can have other issues too. But when white exhaust is happening along with coolant loss or overheating, the odds of an internal problem go up fast. The frustrating part is, drivers often catch this sign too late because the engine still starts and runs. It may even feel mostly normal on the road. Meanwhile, every drive risks more contamination, more overheating, and more damage to the catalytic converter and engine internals. And this next sign is one people usually notice too late: milky oil or contaminated fluids. If you pull the dipstick and the oil looks foamy, creamy, or like a tan milkshake, that's a serious red flag. If you look under the oil cap and see that same kind of sludge, don't ignore it. Coolant mixing with oil wrecks lubrication. Bearings, camshafts, and other internal parts depend on clean oil to survive. Once coolant gets in there, protection drops fast. Now, to keep this honest, a little moisture under the oil cap can sometimes happen from short trips and condensation, especially in colder weather. So don't panic over one tiny bit of residue. But if the oil itself looks contaminated or the coolant reservoir has oily film in it, that's not something to brush off. This is one of those problems that gets dramatically more expensive if ignored, because now you're not just dealing with a sealing problem. You may be dealing with internal engine wear too. Another symptom that deserves way more attention is rough running, especially on startup. If the engine shakes, stumbles, misfires for a few seconds, then smooths out, some people assume it's spark plugs or fuel. And sure, sometimes it is. But if that rough start happens along with coolant loss, overheating, or white exhaust, coolant leaking into a cylinder becomes a real possibility. Overnight, a small amount of coolant can seep in. Then when you start the engine, that cylinder doesn't fire normally until the coolant burns off or clears out. That rough start symptom is easy to dismiss because it can seem minor. The car may run fine 5 minutes later. But the mechanical problem causing it may be getting worse the entire time. If your car has ever overheated or mysteriously lost coolant, let me know what symptoms you noticed, because a lot of drivers see these combinations before they ever get a real answer. One more warning sign that really matters is pressure building in the cooling system. This can show up as bubbling in the coolant reservoir, hoses that feel rock hard sooner than they should, coolant pushing out of the overflow, or a heater that works inconsistently. The heater part confuses a lot of people. They'll notice the heat goes hot, then cold, then hot again, especially when the engine is acting up. That can happen because air or combustion gases are getting into the cooling system and interfering with normal coolant flow. That bubbling and pressure issue is a big deal because it's one of the clearest ways a failing head gasket can create chaos before the engine completely gives up. Most drivers completely overlook this symptom. They think the heater problem is separate, or they blame the coolant reservoir cap, or they just keep adding coolant and moving on. But if combustion gases are entering the cooling system, the engine can overheat even when major components seem okay. So the real takeaway here is simple. Head gasket failure usually gets expensive because people wait too long. The car often keeps driving. The symptoms come and go. Nothing feels catastrophic at first. That's what makes it dangerous. If you've got repeated overheating, unexplained coolant loss, persistent white smoke, contaminated oil, rough startup misfires, or strange pressure in the cooling system, don't jump straight to the worst conclusion, but don't ignore it either. Get it tested properly. A cooling system pressure test, combustion gas test, compression test, or leak down test can tell you a lot before the damage spreads. That early diagnosis is where money gets saved. Because once overheating turns severe, or coolant and oil keep mixing, or the cylinder head gets damaged, you're not talking about a simple fix anymore. You're talking about a repair that can wipe out the value of the car. Pay attention to the small warnings. That's how you avoid the big bills. And if you want more simple advice that helps your engine last longer and avoids massive repair bills, subscribe. Because there are a lot of expensive car problems that start quietly before they get brutal.